First of all, I'm going to give my phone some credit for making my bench look far filthier than it actually is. But today's patient, which will not be finished by the end of this video, is this mashup, I assume, of two different guitars. Possibly two violin basses, but two different guitars, I assume. But when I brought this home the other day, this top was far more sunken in than it is now. The bridge was tilted far more forward, and so basically the action was like constantly super high. Still is. Neck's got its issues, but that was a fairly easy fix. I took all the electronics out. I actually slid them through the body, so I didn't desolder anything. But essentially, I just undid all the screws, took the pickguard off, took the bridge and the cover plate off, and I slid the pickups into the body. I had to take the frame off of this one and out the control. But then I made a tool, and I don't think that I have it handy. Actually, I do have it handy. It's just basically a block of wood with a threaded insert in the bottom. And I did have some pads on the top, but they came off from the heating process. But essentially what this did with other calls on the top, it would go into the bridge pickup cavity. It would get rotated sideways. And yes, I did have a metal plate under it inside the body, so I wasn't putting the screw right into wood. I'm not an idiot. But essentially, I would put a damp rag on top of the guitar, using this little guy at a very specific temperature to heat the top until it was like too hot to touch, but not hot enough that was making the finish bubble. And the reason was to like soften the lignin in the wood, which is the plasticizing agent, I guess, that's in wood. And it's what allows you to heat bend wood into shapes and stuff. And I wanted to kind of put it into plastic mode so I could tighten this bolt and kind of expand the top back out and kind of undo the sink. And I only did that a bit, and I got about, I think, 2 millimeters of compression out of it. That looks a hell of a lot better than it did when I brought it home. And so I'm pretty good with that. And to make sure it wouldn't sink back in again, I put 2 support posts in here that were actually slightly longer than they needed to be, so I could actually pull the top up just a smidge more to get them under there, put a very tiny amount of tight bond on them, but they were well balanced in there. But that's enough for the body. The real issue is the neck. What could be worse than a hollow body that has had its top sink in? Well, this neck has quite the twist to it. It's not the worst twist I've ever seen, but it's pretty bad. And no, it's not an optical illusion. It is, in fact, dipping down over here. But seemingly, it's not a very consistent twist. It seems to start, I think, around here, which is kind of wild. But it might also just be more gradual because the neck is bigger and thicker here and gets skinnier and skinnier as it goes. I have a solution that might be able to fix this. I've taken a pretty decent amount of twist out of another neck, and it seems to be fine still. So the idea here is to create some sort of system that will hold one side of the neck down, preferably the heel side of the neck, and keep it in place no matter what. And then something else that hugs the neck really, really well and tightly, so that I can have an adjustment screw on either side of the neck, and I can kind of tighten the bolt and it will force the twist the other way. Oh no, I think this screw's broken off and the headstock. It's free spinning and it doesn't feel like it's got any friction going on. They're fake. They're not actually screws. That is so weird. I'm going to have to employ a lot of the random bibs and bobs that I've collected over the years to make some sort of jig. And there are like 14 other containers where this came from. I look at a bunch of this stuff and I see parts for something I haven't built yet. And more often than not, I'm always reaching in here and finding exactly what I need for a solution to a problem. And it usually goes pretty well. That's an Allen key. This should go in with my other ones. So here's the jig, and it looks a little incomplete, and that's because it is. It's missing the other 3 portions. Or I guess technically speaking, we could say 4 portions, because there's that. And essentially what we have here is the heel holding portion of this. And I've padded it with some relatively thick, not super thick, but thick enough leather, which will go over the end of the neck here. And this is a little riser block that goes underneath it to lift it up just a little bit, so I have a little bit more room underneath the neck here for the other portions. And this will bolt down with these ginormous screws here. And this portion here goes on top of the neck, right over the fretboard and over that fret. And then this one goes underneath, and it's also leather. And essentially how this one works is I got these pretty hefty screws here that will bolt from underneath into the top piece here. This end of the screw, or the bolt, will go into this little thing here, which will hopefully keep it from traveling in any crazy directions. It's rubber, so it's not like the most structurally sound thing in the world, but it should at least keep it relatively in a very small region. And the reason that we have a second one here is because the neck will want to just lift straight up as I'm tightening this screw and having it push. So I need something to kind of hold this side of the neck in position and at height, so that I'm actually getting upward lift on only this side, and therefore like twisting the neck in the opposite direction. Anyways, time to go get some tin foil, some saran wrap, and a towel, and a source of water. Now, I decided that I'm not going to use saran wrap because after sitting and thinking about this for a bit, which is a good thing to do before you do any sort of job like this, I figured the saran wrap might not be able to handle the heat very well. It might start burning, it might melt, releasing fumes into my environment, and I'm not big on that idea. So I'm gonna start there. This might be overkill, and when I'm done here, I'm probably going to very carefully unravel this aluminum and fold it up so I can use it for other jobs in the future. So I'm going to try my best not to have this just be waste, because that's terrible. Alright, I've got my coffee. I'm going to get myself a snack eventually throughout this process. The iron is now heating up over here, sitting on a metal surface, so it's not touching anything that can burn or melt. You can feel the heat radiating from it already. Got a little canister of water here, screwdriver, all is ready to go. And while I would have normally trimmed this towel to be the right size, I actually kind of want a bit of overspill, so that if I do get a little bit of overspilled water, the towel will soak it up. But now it's a matter of like actually wetting this towel. And I can hear my little guy over there squealing a bit. I don't want to like over soak this too much, but the tin foil should keep the neck from getting directly wet. I'm sure steam will get into it eventually as the neck heats up. Moisture might make its way through. Maybe not though. Now it's pretty soaked. Here we go. Here's like forever hours of heating and wetting a towel wrapped tinfoil guitar neck. There's always the risk that this is going to delaminate the fretboard, and as much as I don't really want that to happen, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world because the fretboard's already kind of delaminated in some parts, and I need to deal with that eventually. But it wouldn't really be worth it if I can't get the twist out. So I'm going to do this for a while, and I will come back to you. Okay, so my ruler has a new mark on it for how high the end of the fretboard is on this side and how high it is on this side. This side, the treble side of the fretboard, right where the nut goes, is actually slightly higher than the bass side. I've heard no cracking or weird sounds, so it's a good sign. And so now it's basically over twisted ever so slightly. I don't know how much it's going to spring back, but if it springs back, you know, and it's got less twist in it than before, I'm going to call it good. I'm not expecting to get all the twist out. Basically what I'm doing here is I'm letting the iron stay in one of 3 spots for an allotted amount of time and then moving it up the neck more to kind of try and make sure the whole neck stays hot. I've increased the temperature of this a little bit at a time throughout this process to the point where now I'm actually feeling quite a significant amount of heat on the underside of the neck when the towel was actually cold down here. So it means that it's actually penetrated the neck. I got the twist I wanted to put into it now, and it's just a matter of keeping it hot for a while, making sure this neck gets really, really hot consistently through the whole thing. The neck has finally reached too hot to touch the underside status, so I'm just giving it 1 or 2 more rounds of this up and down the neck. And with that, I let the neck cool for a while before removing it from the jig and unwrapping the tin foil, folding it up like I said I would to use for future jobs, whether that's heating a neck up or something else that needs a bit of tin foil, because I'm trying to be less wasteful. I waste enough tape as it is. I want to be not wasteful wherever I can. But with the neck out and cooled down, there is basically no twist anymore. The camera doesn't really do it much justice, but in person, it is very much not twisted anymore, and I'm pretty impressed with myself. I gave it a slight back bow because the strings do bend in the neck under tension quite a bit more than I'm used to, so I'm kind of preparing for that. I'm preparing for that. So I'm going to put the bass back together, string it up to tune, and see how it behaves with the newly untwisted neck.